Good morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service for Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Troy Moon, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm presenting the service today. Lay-led worship is a long-standing tradition at A2U2, and most of our services for the summer will be lay-led. From September to late June, most of our services are led by our minister, the Reverend Donna Dahlham. This week, our offering will be shared with Maine Needs, which strives to help families and individuals in Maine meet their basic material needs by providing donated clothing, hygiene products, household items, and other necessities. They focus the work on those starting life over from scratch. If you'd like to contribute to the offering, you can go to our website, a2u2.org, and use the Donate button at the top of the page. Choose the option to Give to the Plate. You can also send a check to the church. You're invited to join us today, July 18th, after the service for our congregational conversation and coffee hour. To learn more about Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church, please go to our website at a2u2.org. For our chalice lighting this morning, we'll hear a few words by Emily N. Johnson, a contributor to the wonderful anthology All We Can Save, which is a bunch of writings written by women working in the climate space, and it's heartily recommended for anyone who wants to pick it up. It's coming out in paperback very shortly, and it's well worth the read. It's a constant question for me every time I am entranced by the beauty of this world. What does it mean to love this place? What does it mean to love anyone or anything in a world whose vanishing is accelerating, perhaps beyond our capacity to save the things we love the most? Many of you know that for my day job, I'm the sustainability director for the city of Portland. So in that capacity, I'm leading the city's efforts to address climate change and global heating. It's work that I feel really honored and privileged to be doing. I'm one of the fortunate people who are able to get paid to work on issues that are truly meaningful to them and who get, to make a real difference in the community in really visible ways. So today, I'm speaking entirely for myself. I'm not representing anybody but me. But as my family knows, my work and climate change are things that I talk a lot about. So when Erica Bartlett reached out earlier this year to ask whether I would do a service this summer, I jumped at the chance. I think this is the third summer that I've been doing a service related to climate. And I was actually feeling really optimistic about climate action, maybe for the first time. Activists around the world and here in Portland are making their voices heard. Politicians and people in power seem to finally be listening. In Portland and South Portland, we've adopted One Climate Future, our joint climate action plan. The state said Maine can't wait, created the Maine Climate Council, and adopted a climate action plan for the state. Even the federal government is finally talking seriously about climate change. Renewable energy is on the rise, and the cost to build new solar and wind is actually less than it costs to operate existing coal plants in lots of places around the world. And at least part of the financial sector seems to finally be getting it. Insurgent investors have seized seats on the ExxonMobil board of directors, arguing that the company wasn't positioning itself to compete in a decarbonized economy. And courts around the world are forcing carbon producing fossil fuel companies to finally take action to reduce emissions and move towards leaving it in the ground. So it all seemed really exciting. But then the last couple of weeks hit, and I've found myself questioning my optimism as we see accelerating climate catastrophes happening all over. You're probably familiar with some of the ones in the U.S., the heat dome in the Pacific Northwest that brought temperatures to over 115 degrees in Portland, Oregon, devastating wildfires all over the West, massive drought in the Southwest with major reservoirs like Lake Powell and Lake Mead almost dried up, crazy flash flooding in Detroit that overwhelmed their stormwater system, and similar catastrophes worldwide. In Central Africa, huge problems. And in last week, you probably saw in the news or this week, past week, devastation in Europe with unprecedented flooding, many people killed and many people missing. The Middle East, not spared. There's been days recently with heat temperatures rising over 50 degrees centigrade. That's over 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if this continues, parts of the Middle East may soon be uninhabitable because of the heat. And I know I'm not alone being kind of really struck by what's been happening recently, and certainly the political system, the political situation in the U.S. and around the world isn't always encouraging, with certain factions resisting efforts to make a difference and to really enact the policies we need to enact to make a difference. So one of the things I'm kind of working through during my service today is how do we, are we doing enough? What are we, can we do enough, or where are we headed? And we'll help think it through together, perhaps. To get started, I have a little bit of a musical interlude, a song by a local band here in Portland called Golden Oak, and the woman who's the singer is a colleague of Sally's, and graciously offered to let us use their music in our service. So this is Golden Oak.
Said, listen here, little one. There's a lot of good people living under the water, screaming out what's to come. A few people who can't be bought. Listen here, little one. Many stories to be told. A few hands wrapped in gold. But there's a lot of good people living under the water, and the house on the hill can't see the light that is still shining through all that's below. Think they ought to know. My hand, little one. See the greed drilled in the mountain. Coke was here, carbon stain. Still a lot of good people living under the water, and the life on the line. The truth that'll come in time. That the first to feel this change aren't the ones to blame.
what's really coming home to me is that we really are in a new era, the Anthropocene, as some scientists have come to call it, a world created and influenced by the actions of the human race, particularly the burning of fossil fuels that fill the atmosphere with CO2. And what's most striking is that the climate catastrophe has happened so soon. It is happening so soon. Here in the US, anyway, many of us thought about climate change and its impacts as something that we're planning for in the future. Human beings are really good at putting things off and rationalizing danger that doesn't feel immediately urgent. We need to prepare for things that will happen in 30 years. That's not too soon, so we don't have to do much about it now. Well, maybe we can think about some plans. Well, in 1988, Dr. James Hansen warned the US Congress that burning fossil fuels was going to heat the planet. A few cities and countries began to take some modest actions because we have time, they thought. So now they've made some limited progress, but globally, as a species, we've done worse than that. Much, much worse. We've actually emitted more CO2 since Dr. Hansen's warning than we had in the entire history of the world before his warning in 1988. And here we are. The future is now. How did we get here? It's partly that human beings are really bad at planning for the future, but it's also because fossil fuel companies followed the playbook of big tobacco to sow doubt about the science of climate change. They lobbied governments, made donations to politicians to prevent even modest policy changes that could have averted catastrophe, and here we are. The terrible impacts predicted by scientists like Dr. Hansen and others are here now, and they will get worse, even as we finally take serious actions to reduce emissions. So how do I feel about this? I am pissed off that our leaders didn't take actions we knew were necessary to avoid this. I am pissed off that fossil fuel companies lied about what they knew would happen if we kept pumping oil. But I'm also grieving that the world I grew up in is departing. For instance, several years ago I went to Wyoming to climb mountains in the Wind River Range. I was really excited to see, the alpine environment and all the beauty of the mountains. But one of the things I really wanted to do on that trip was to see pikas. So pikas are little creatures that live in the alpine zone. They're, it's like the size of like big mice. But I wanted to see them before they go extinct because their habitat is disappearing. As climate warms, they go higher and higher up the mountain. But before much longer, they want to reach the top, and that will be the end of the line for them. I know other people have other, creatures or environments that are really meaningful to them that are disappearing, like monarch butterflies. So, when we were young, many of us were younger, butterflies were everywhere, and we thought we saw them. And now we see a butterfly, and it's really exciting because, they're going extinct. Their habitats being destroyed in climate change and, human behavior using, pesticides and, unsustainable ways to grow our food. So things that we took for granted are no longer. And I worry about what young people will face in the future. The events of the past few weeks suggest it won't be easy for them as they grow up in a rapidly warming climate. So for me, naming this anger and this grief and this fear is an important part of my personal climate action. And how can we not feel these feelings? Just saying this out loud today with you guys feels empowering to me, and it feels really honest. And that's like a good place to be. I think it's a good place to be able to step forward for more action to help make sure that the world we leave behind is as good as it can be.
I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. Now the low part. All moves on in perfect motion. All is change and ever rolling ocean. All moves. We'll do that part two more times. In ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, the wind of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, and the wind of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion.
As the impacts of climate change become more pronounced and begin affecting people in the West, more and more people are saying it's too late. Humankind didn't listen to the warnings and didn't take the necessary actions to prevent disaster. We have effed around and found out, to paraphrase a popular online meme. But to me, there's something deeply cynical about this attitude. Sure, things are bad and will get worse in coming decades, but the bad consequences and suffering are not and will not be fairly distributed. People who have the fewest resources to respond to the impacts of climate change are currently experiencing the worst impacts. What's particularly unfair is that they did the least to contribute to the carbon emissions that are causing the climate catastrophe in the first place. Central Africa is the place on Earth most impacted by climate change, yet Africa contributes a tiny fraction of global CO2 emissions. Central America is also highly impacted, yet emits very little CO2. These places have been feeling the impacts of climate change for many years with flooding, droughts, powerful storms fueled by warming seas, plagues of locusts, literally, and crop failures. As climate impacts become more pronounced here in the industrialized global north, they will become almost untenable in many parts of the world. Already in the Middle East and Pakistan, heat conditions make it perilous to be outside during parts of the day. Drought and crop failures will force people to leave their homes. By 2050, the UN expects millions upon millions of climate refugees to be on the move worldwide. So, as Westerners, or Americans, throwing up our hands and saying it's too late to act comes from a deep place of privilege, and to me, is an immoral act. It condemns people in the parts of the world that we have historically exploited to more suffering. So no, we can't fix climate change at this point. There's no going back to the good old days of a stable climate, but we can take action to limit the damage. Every ton of carbon we don't emit is carbon that isn't warming the planet and contributing to someone's misery. Limiting global temperatures to 2 degrees C is better than 3 degrees C, which is infinitely better than higher than that. So we have to act. Now, it's important to recognize that defeatism, doomism, and apathy only serve the interests of fossil fuel companies who hope to squeeze every last dollar from their oily investments while they still can. So let's not help them. The good news is we know what we need to do to limit global heating, and we have the technology to do it now. In fact, we listed those things in One Climate Future when my team and I worked on them. So we know we want to electrify almost everything, building energy efficiency, widespread adoption of EVs, build walkable neighborhoods so people don't even need cars, and to decarbonize industry. Of course, it's easy to say these things. It's doing them that's hard. There are vested interests and people comfortable with the status quo who don't really want to change. Fossil fuel companies don't want clean electricity. Many builders don't support energy efficiency because they think it costs too much. It doesn't. Oil companies hate EVs, and some people don't want their neighborhood to change and fight density. And certainly fossil fuel companies don't want to decarbonize industry. So it boils down to policy and political action. We need to hold our political leaders accountable and demand policies that protect the climate. But we also need to talk to our friends, neighbors, and fellow citizens about the change. Think of all the benefits of a decarbonized community. Cleaner air because we're not burning gas and diesel. Quieter streets as people drive EVs, ride bikes, and walk. And comfortable homes that are heated and cooled with efficient electric heat pumps. Climate-friendly policies can make our towns and cities even better places to live. Or we can do nothing. It's our choice. Change is coming whether we like it or not.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
With the climate increasingly unstable because of rising CO2 emissions, it's not entirely certain where we are headed in our blue boat with all of our companions from around the world. Assumptions we made about when it would be hot or cold, rainy or sunny, calm or stormy are no longer valid. As we talked about earlier, we have a pretty good idea about what we need to do to ensure that life on Earth has a better future, but we don't know all the details yet. We'll have to figure that out as we go. But people are creative and ingenious. We find new and interesting ways to do things. We create art and beauty even in the face of adversity. The best artists, musicians, and scientists do their most important work when they take risks, when they think outside the constraints of prevailing wisdom that channel progress along a predetermined path. They also incorporate ideas from other creative people in order to create something better, more beautiful, more successful than their idea would have been on its own. Our future is dangerous with only an outline of a chart to guide us along. We need to be brave, creative, and thoughtful people who collaborate. We all have a part to play, a verse to sing, or a drum to beat. We have to be ready to join in, to improvise, and co-create a finer future.
It was a little messy.
Your mother's listening.